Hey guys, this is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here to bring you our Draftkings defense picks for week 2 of NFL DFS. There's a couple defenses that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about some of the ones that really stand out as some of the top options that we like. The first one I want to discuss is the Baltimore Ravens defense going up against the Oakland Raiders. Now, the Ravens are very stout against the run, which means it's going to be a really long day for a guy like Latavius Murray. And the problem that I have here is that in order for Oakland to really move the ball, they're really going to have to try to throw the ball through the air. Now, David Carr hurt his hand last week, so right now his status is actually still up in the air. Hopefully, when we get closer to the weekend, we'll have a better understanding and idea of whether or not he's going to play. Whether he plays or not, though, I still think that this defense is going to be able to generate enough pressure and probably have a lead and be playing from ahead, which is going to force this Oakland team into being a one-dimensional passing team. Now, the way that Carr has turned the ball over so far in his career, that could mean a big day for the Ravens defense. If Carr doesn't play, I'm actually not even sure who the backup is for Oakland. I would have to really go and do some research and look, but I can't imagine that the matchup's going to be any better for whoever that is as well. I do think that the Ravens have a chance to pick up a couple sacks in this game, some turnovers, and maybe even turn one of them into 6 points. And that's really what we look for with the defense. On top of that, Oakland does have one of the lowest expected totals this weekend as well. So I do think that the Ravens will get some of the bonus points for keeping them off the board. Overall, I think the Ravens are a really, really good choice for defense this week. They're only 2,900 over on DraftKings, and I think that they're going to go off a little bit lower owned than they should, and should be a defense that we all look to have into some of our rosters. The next team I want to talk about is the St. Louis Rams. The Rams go up against the Washington Redskins. Now, we know that Kirk Cousins had a problem with interceptions and getting picked off last year. He wasn't horrible in week 1 against Miami, but he wasn't exactly great either. Now, this St. Louis defense did have, I think, 6 sacks against Russell Wilson. Wilson is not a guy who usually takes a lot of sacks, so that shows you the relentlessness that this defense has. They were able to go ahead and beat the Seahawks. They did pick up an interception in that game as well. And this is a really, really solid, really stud defense. They stop the run pretty well. They defend against the pass pretty well. They're up towards the top third of the league in just about every category. So I think that St. Louis Rams are another team going up against a weak offense in the Washington Redskins that has a chance to really put up some points. Like I said, they had 6 sacks last week, and that's not something you see every day. You get a couple points per sack. You know, they're going to get you a double-digit score even if they do give up a lot of points, which is not something I see them doing this week. The next team I want to talk about is the Miami Dolphins defense. Now, the Dolphins defense didn't have a huge week last week, but they did wind up getting a touchdown, and they did wind up getting a couple positive events that wound up salvaging it for them. I think they finished up with about 17 fantasy points on DraftKings, 14 fantasy points, somewhere in that range, which was not the highest scoring defense on the week, but it was a very respectable total. And this week they go up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I expect Miami to have a lead in this game and force Jacksonville to have to pass late. Bortles has been somebody who's been very turnover prone in his career. Excuse me. When you force him to throw a lot of passes, he does wind up making mistakes and he does throw interceptions. So if you can put him in that situation, I think that this Miami team is going to be able to get after him. Like we said last week, this is a defense that we really like. When you add Ndamukong Suh into the middle of that defense, he's going to draw a lot of double teams. By drawing double teams, he's going to allow guys like Oliver and Wake on the outside to have one-on-ones getting after the quarterback. And this Miami team should be able to generate a lot of pressure this year. The more pressure you generate, the more sacks you get, the more fumble recoveries. Also, the more passes you force the quarterback to throw quickly. And every once in a while, he'll throw a pass that is, into a bad window and somebody will pick it off. So I definitely am looking for Miami to pick up at least 1 interception in this game. I think they'll get a couple sacks, and I think they have a good chance to get, some turnovers, maybe even a defensive touchdown off of one of them as well. The next team I want to talk about is the Detroit Lions going up against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, here's the deal. I do like Teddy Bridgewater because I think he's going to have to pass the ball, but I also think that Teddy Bridgewater passing the ball could lead to a few more turnovers. Detroit's run defense is very solid, so I don't think that Adrian Peterson is going to have a huge game today. I think that Minnesota is going to have to throw the ball. And if you can force the team to throw the ball, then you're going to be able to go after them to get some sacks and to try to get some turnovers, which is really how we score a lot of points in fantasy football. So if you can make a team one-dimensional, which I think Detroit is going to be able to make the Minnesota Vikings in this game, I think they're going to be able to pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. And that's the recipe that we look for to build up a lot of fantasy points. So at only 2,900, I definitely think this Detroit team is another one that you might want to look at. The Patriots are going up against the Buffalo Bills. They're 2,900 as well. Now, listen, the Patriots are not a great defense. They're not the dominant defense of the Teddy Bruschi days when they were winning their first couple Super Bowls. But one thing that this defense is very opportunistic. They always wind up getting some turnovers and converting them into, points on the other end. It's a kind of a philosophy of a bend but don't break. They'll give up a couple points to you here or there, but eventually they're going to get you for a big turnover, give the ball back to their offense, and their offense is going to, go down the field and score and stop the back and forth that goes on throughout the rest of the game. And once they do that and they get a lead, then they're able to come after you and really bring some exotic blitzes. One thing that we've always known about Bill Belichick is he is able to confuse a quarterback. He's able to do it to guys who are veterans like Peyton Manning, so he's definitely going to be able to do it to a young guy like Tyrod Taylor, who's really only making like his second start of his career. I think that Taylor had a really good first week, but I think that playing against a Bill Belichick defense is going to be a much tougher task for him than playing against a pretty weak Indianapolis defense in the first week. So I do think that New England could get a couple sacks here. I think that New England could get a couple turnovers as well. And I'm looking for the Patriots to win this game. So I think that late in the game, they're going to be able to pin their ears back and just kind of go after the quarterback and, force him into turning the ball over. Next team and last team I want to talk about is the Tennessee Titans at $3,000. Now, the Titans are fresh off of a really big game against Jameis Winston where they picked them off. They ran it back for a touchdown. They had a couple sacks, a couple interceptions. I mean, they played really, really well. On the flip side, the Cleveland Browns had a game where they played absolutely horrendous. Now, McCown got hit and knocked out with a concussion. I don't know if he's going to be back yet. I haven't seen if he passed the concussion protocol, and I haven't seen any of the coach speak that says who the starter is going to be. Johnny Manziel came in for him, threw a big touchdown pass, made a couple nice runs with his legs, but also wound up with, I think, 3 turnovers. I think he had an interception. He had a fumble on a sack, and I think he had another fumble when he was scrambling that they knocked the ball out of there. So if Manziel is starting, there's definitely going to be a chance for them to pick up some turnovers because he holds the ball like it's a loaf of bread, and he throws the ball into some tight windows, tries to force a few throws where I think they're going to be able to get him. Now, the Jets were able to get a bunch of turnovers against them last week. They were also able to pick up a couple sacks, and they were able to limit that Browns offense to, basically only a couple big plays here and there that got most, if not all, of the yards that the Browns wound up having. I think that Tennessee's defense is decent enough. They looked pretty good last week against Tampa Bay. And I think against a horrible offense like Cleveland, they're going to be in a really good spot here to have a big fantasy day. They are $3,000 over at Draftkings this week and are probably one of my favorite defenses to use. I've been rolling them out a lot, basically just based on the matchup. So there's a couple ideas of some defenses that you guys can look at. There's a couple others in the middle of the pack that we were looking at. Got teams like the Saints, the Seahawks, even though they have a tough matchup against Green Bay this week, the Cardinals against Chicago, the Panthers against the Texans, and even the Jets against the Indianapolis Colts have a little bit of merit as well. Andrew Luck is a very good quarterback, but he is a little bit turnover prone at times, and that Jet defense looked really good last week. Again, it's a big upgrade, the offense that they're going to be facing this week, but those are the teams that I think are the ones that you should be looking at. If you ask me right now which one was my favorite, I'd probably have to go with the Baltimore Ravens, really just because I am not enamored at all with that Oakland offense, and I think that they're going to be able to stop the running game, forcing Oakland to have to pass the ball, which I think is going to not work out very well for the Raiders. So that pretty much sums it up for our defenses for the week. Thank you guys for joining us over here at RotoCurve, and as always, stay classy, DFS.